Hello everyone. Today we're talking about Python Lambda functions. So we have already seen what functions in Python are and how we define them using the def keyword. Now Lambda functions are also called anonymous functions because here we don't really need to give a name to the function. And this is because we typically use Lambda functions when we don't need to call them again and again, or we use it within a body of another function or a loop where a single definition works for us. So Lambda functions take arguments just like functions. They have an expression which they evaluate, and they can take any number of arguments, and then that is returned back. So when Lambda functions are used, this is the way the syntax works. Let's take a look. Now we are going to define a variable called double, and what we get in double is outcome of this lambda. Now we are using the lambda keyword. Remember, this lambda function will not have any defined name for it. So double is not the name for the lambda function. Double is the name for the variable, that the value that we're going to get when this lambda function executes. The first part of it is the argument we're going to pass it. So as I said, you can take any number of arguments. In this particular case, we're going to take just one argument. And internally, lambda is going to say this argument is labeled x. What it will do inside the lambda function follows the colon. So after the colon is the body of the lambda function, and it has to be on one line. So what this function is doing is it's taking in a value x, then multiplying it by 2 and returning it. So whatever value we pass to lambda is going to be doubled and returned, and that is going to be stored in this value, this variable over here. So if we do this, if we print double of 5, now double is the variable. We have given it 5, which is going to pass to the lambda and then return us 10. So this is the outcome we have right over here. Alright, so let's see what happens next. This is the same function as this function. We can define a function called double, give it the value x, and then return. So the difference between a lambda and a function is that in this case we are going to define a function explicitly, and then we can call it from anywhere in the code. A lambda is typically called within the same line of code where it is used or very nearby. It is also frequently used as an argument to a higher function. So we're going to see an example of how exactly that is done. In Python, we have several functions which require another function as part of the arguments. So one of these is filter. The filter function takes two arguments. It's going to take a function and a sequence or an iterable. The function is the one which tells the filter, okay, run this function on the sequence, and then whatever is applicable, whatever filters through, has to be returned. So this becomes clearer with an example. Say we have a list called mylist with these numbers in it, 1, 5, 4, 6, 8, 11, 3 and 12. Now we want to filter out the numbers in such a way that our return is only the even numbers. So the function that we want to apply to this list is check whether the number is even or not. So that is the nature of the function. How we implement it is like this. We assign the returned value, the returned list, to another variable called newList, and the filter is applied like this. Let's look at the individual components of the filter. So filter is the function we are calling. The first argument is going to be a function. The second argument is going to be a sequence. The sequence we have already defined over here. Look at the function now. It's a lambda function. So lambda with single input x, and it's going to return a value which is true or false, because filter works on a true or false value. So when we hit an even number, the remainder is going to be 0, and this whole expression is going to evaluate to true. So filter is going to say, okay, for this first part of the iterable, filter is going to apply this function to the whole list, remember? So when filter works with the first iterable element, it says, okay, 1, I apply the function, the value comes out to be false. So since it is false, this element does not go into this new list over here. Then it goes to 5, does the same thing, doesn't go into the new list because 5 is also odd. When it comes to 4, it passes 4 to this lambda, and this time the lambda will return a true value. So because filter got a true with 4, it says, okay, 4 has to go to the new list. So when we print the new list, this is the outcome we get. We get all the even numbers here. So filtering is going to go element by element through the iterable and return whatever element it's a true value across the lambda. Now this lambda could be defined very elaborately also. So it's a very, very powerful function here. Let's take a look at another example where we can use a lambda function as an argument to a higher order function. And this is an example where we're going to use map. Now filter was just selecting values based on truth. Map is going to map every single value. So again we have to pass a function and an iterable. The map is going to apply that function to every element of the iterable and then return the value. So let's say we want to have a map of functions where the iterable, the single element that is doubled and returned. So let's define a list again. This is the same list as above, 1, 5, 4, 6, 8, 11, 3 and 12. Now this time instead of filtering we are applying a map function. So map, the first part we want to pass to map is a lambda, a function, and the second argument is going to be the list over here. So you can, by now you can well imagine what this lambda is going to do. Every time map comes across the iterable, for every single element, map is going to apply this lambda, and then whatever it gets back from this lambda, whatever the return is, that return goes into the new list. So this time we are not filtering, we are applying to every element and returning. So 1 becomes 2 because it's multiplied by 2, 5 becomes 10, 4 becomes 8, and there's the list. So lambdas can be used very, very effectively in this way. You don't have to think up function names, which can be a task in itself. It saves memory because all those functions don't need to be stored in memory. Lambda is used and then discarded, and the next time you use a lambda, even if you're using it in the next line, it's defined all over again. So it's efficient for code execution as well. And when you come to data science and machine learning, you'll find that changing your data in whole large columns can be done very, very efficiently with lambdas. So we'll come to that later. This is all today for the lambda functions. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.